dive into the complicated financial web of tech giant Apple as we try to figure out what's going on with its mind-boggling $200 billion problem. We'll look at how having too much money affects innovation, market dynamics, and business strategy in this fascinating investigation. Come with us on an interesting trip through the complicated world of Apple's finances, where having too much money can be a big problem. Let's get into it. Before we go into more detail, you should know that Apple makes $378.35 billion a year. Now, in a video like this, people are tempted to put that kind of money into perspective by telling you what you could buy with it, but it's so much money that we are not sure there's anything that could do it justice. We mean, you could buy almost exactly 100 billion Big Macs, which is 12 for every person alive right now, or you could buy the most expensive bags ever. The most expensive boat ever built is covered in gold 79 times over. Or you could stretch all those dollars out and back 1,172 times, which would make Pluto feel better about not being a planet anymore, and that's just what they'll make in 2021. That means that even the biggest spender would have a hard time getting rid of all that cash, even if they really like macarons. That may be why Apple has 202 right now. Apple has $6 billion in the bank. What does the company do with all that cash? Let's find out. Play music. Before we talk about how rich Apple is, let's take a closer look at where their money comes from. Luckily, their Q3 report just came out and gives us all the information we need. It says that in Q3 2022, Apple made $64 billion from selling products and $17 billion from selling services. That's not free money, though. Those sales cost them $46 billion, so it's not free money. With a gross margin of $35 billion, a surprisingly large portion came from selling services. After taking into account other costs and taxes, they're down to a respectable $22 billion in 3 months, which isn't bad. But where in the world is that money coming from? Well, most of the profit is made in the Americas, with Europe and China also being important markets for the company. Which products brought in the most cash? With net sales of just under $40 billion in Q3, it's interesting that sales of the Mac, iPad, and wearable tech are all worth about the same amount of money, $7 billion to $8 billion. Services, on the other hand, make up an amazing $17 billion. As we said before, even after taking into account the costs, Apple is still making a lot of money. According to data from the most recent quarter, Apple makes about $2,160 in profit every second. That means that by the time you've read this, it's normal for businesses to set aside some profit as a rainy day fund. But Apple is having a bit of a problem with this huge profit pile up every second. They're almost making more money than they know what to do with. It's not normal for that rainy day fund to become a world flood fund like the Noah Fund. That's not a joke. Either way, Apple has about $200 billion in the bank right now, which is enough to buy McDonald's, Verizon, Nike, or AMD with extra cash. They're not doing that. And some big Apple investors have said that the company is being too cautious and letting their money pile up, which is a bad idea right now. Instead, what are they doing with their huge amounts of money to keep inflation from eating away at it and investors from getting so tired of waiting? Well, one good step they're already taking is investing, which has been called the Tim Cook Doctrine, because Cook wants to see more of it. Apple promised to spend more and more on research and development, and they have. Over the last 10 years, Apple's R&D spending has been rapidly increasing, reaching a high of $21 billion in 2021, which is about 6% of its total revenue. Cooks is hoping that this R&D spending will help Apple shake its reputation as a bit of a laggard in the tech industry. Apple's great branding and ability to make tech accessible might make them seem innovative, but it's rare for Apple to actually. This is what companies do. This R&D spend is going in two main directions. First, Apple spends a lot of money making its products. In 2019, Cook told investors that Apple's long-term goal is to own and control the main technology behind the goods they make, and this investment seems to be paying off. Instead of buying processors straight from companies like Qualcomm or Intel, Apple now puts custom processors in almost all of their products. To make this happen and spend even more money, Apple has also been buying some tech companies that matter. Now, these may not be as big of a deal as Apple's $1 billion purchase of Intel's modem division. Still, Apple has been able to successfully buy important companies. These deals have also been generally well received, with reviewers regularly praising the efficiency and power of these new processes. They've also helped Apple power whole new product lines, like the Bluetooth chips inside their incredibly popular AirPods. which brought in about $12 billion last year. This extra control probably also gives Apple more power when supply chain problems affect tech companies in general, which is a big problem right now. Apple isn't just making more parts in-house. The company is also putting more money than ever into big projects for the future. These aren't always going to make their current products better. Some may never even make it to shelves. But they are big bets that could help the company's future. For example, there have been a lot of rumors about Apple's Project Titan, which is said to be working on self-driving car technologies, and has recently hired top executives from Tesla and other big companies. It's also said to be working on augmented reality technologies, and there are a lot of fake mock-ups of these on social media. We may know that these aren't real, but Apple does seem to be putting a lot of money into these technologies. While Apple's spending is rising compared to its earnings, it's still a long way behind other tech giants. Alphabet has spent about 15.7% of its sales on research and development, while Microsoft has invested 13.4%. This is a big problem for Apple, as some investors are criticizing their hoarding. This is because tech companies are expected to grow every year by releasing a new iPhone and making a standard amount of profit. Not enough anymore. Companies are getting into trouble even when growth slows down. So Apple is under a lot of pressure to move into new industries to get enough growth. Apple can grow through phones and computers, but eventually, they'll hit a demand cap. That's why big companies are now thinking about moving into completely new industries to disrupt and keep fueling their growth. As we said, Apple is something that helps them grow, while Amazon is focusing on health, and Meta is putting a lot of money into whatever it is. Apple is spending money to come up with new ideas and enter new markets. This might calm investors down, but Apple also uses stock buybacks, which are exactly what they sound like, buying back shares from investors. In 2021, Apple spent $85.7 billion buying back shares, $5 billion in buying back shares, which is on top of the more than $467 billion they've spent on buybacks over the last 10 years. These numbers far outpace other tech companies and even other business giants that are also trying to get their stock back right now. Some investors are pleased with this, and analysts are using earnings per stock as a key indicator. However, Apple has had about the same amount of money in the bank since the figure. So, it looks like Apple is still making more money than it knows how to spend, even though it is investing more and buying back shares at record-breaking levels. As we come to the end of our investigation into Apple's $200 billion problem, the effects of this huge wealth are clear. The extra cash brings up interesting questions, ranging from strategic dilemmas to changes in the business. Stay tuned for more on this story as Apple tries to find the right mix between new ideas and making a lot of money. In a computer world that is always changing, this financial puzzle will have a big impact on the future of one of the biggest companies in the world. If you like this video, make sure to like it and hit the subscribe button.